I'd like to discuss the Mishnah in Shabbos Daf Kuf Beis on Beis, which is about Malachta Miskayemes on Shabbos, and Rashi and the Rambam. Then we have Beksiva, similar halacha, and then to go to the discussion, which is really not so clear in the Bavli, the discussion of Binyan Lisha, which is really a steer in two Gemaras, Tichsam Sefer and other Gdei Achronim, and then there's to discuss the practical halacha of sometimes which things do you have, in toys and different tashmishan of stuff that a person could have. You could even have it in a stender sometimes to unscrew it and screw it to make it higher, about when we would apply the halacha of binyan l'shah and steer l'shah. So the Mishnah tells us that Kuf Beis on Beis in Shabbos, the Mishnah's Perek Haboine discusses Kol Oisem Malacha.
Can I ask the Rav to move back a few inches? If you don't mind, a little close to the screen.
The Mishnah tells us Kol Oisem Malacha, Malachta Miskayemes b'Shabbos is chayiv because of Melachas Boina. There's a fundamental machlokes between Rashi and the Rambam how to interpret this law in the Mishnah Kol Oisem Malacha Malachta Miskayemes. Rashi tells us Kol Oisem Malacha is b'Shabbos, Malachta Miskayemes. Rashi says that it's ein daite lohisev aleh. Means he built this building, and this is how he wants to leave it. He doesn't have any intentions to add anything on, because if you didn't to add on more, it's not finished, it's not complete, and then he wouldn't be chayiv. But since this is das, and it's achayim miskayim kamoisa, people leave such a building, it'll be considered malachas boina. That is the shita of Rashi. The shita of the Rambam has a totally different interpretation in how to understand this Mishnah. What does it mean, malachta miskayemes b'Shabbos? There are other malachas, l'mashal. We know, we had the Gemara, just discussed in the Gemara before, kosher has to be kesher shakayam. Then the other malachas, the Mishnah says, koisev, when a person writes, if you write with, on the avak shebedrachim, and it's not going to last, you're not chayiv. But so we'll start with the Rambam Perek Tes Halacha Yud Gimel. So we have Rashi sheyesh miskayemes ki yotzebem, and a person keeps it. But if you go to the Rambam says a different interpretation on this Mishnah. Atzevei achut she'orchei arba tefachim. Oy, someone died a chut that's 4 tefachim, which is usually the sheer choshev for tzviyah. Oy davar she'efshel lahatvis imenu chut kazeh chayiv. Something you could spin, it has enough thread that you can make a strand of 4 tvachim. You're not chayiv for doing something. What happens if a person used dye that's not going to last? He's not chayiv. A dye that's not going to last at all. Kagoin shehever srak or sheshor agabi barzel. He put some type of paint on top of metal that you could scrape that off. Or in the choishes, v'tzav potter. Put a little dye on top of a piece of metal, it's very easy to scrape it off. Says the Rambam, in such a case, you not be chayiv. He's dyeing it for a short amount, and it's not considered melachas tzviyah. Is potter. Anything that the malacha is not miskayim on Shabbos, it's not going to last, he'll be potter. Where did the Rambam get this halacha from? So the Maggid Mishnah says, the Maggid Mishnah on top says, Mishnah Perek Ha'orik, Niskra Perek Zev, Einat Sevea, where Zeh no Mamidin Koisev, She'ene Abudavar Miskayim. The Ksav, you only chayiv El Abudavar Miskayim. The Mishnah says, Nafkov Dal, if a person writes with the, like a little dirt, dust on a table, and he's not chayiv for that. Then the Maggid says that the Ram also had a Mishnah. Mishnah Perek Haboine Zeh Klal. Kol Oisem Melacha u'Melachta Miskayemes b'Shabbos is chayiv. So the Rambam interpreted the Mishnah totally different than Rashi, which is pretty clear in the Yad. He says, B'chol she'im Melachta Miskayemes b'Shabbos, something which is not going to last for Shabbos, he'd be potter. So the Rabbi Maggid is explaining that the Rambam's interpretation of the Mishnah was different than Rashi. Rashi understood the Mishnah was that you're building something that Oisem Malach is on Shabbos. That's one tonight, not a tonight. He did the Malacha on Shabbos. Malachta Miskayemes means that you plan on keeping it. That this Malacha is going to last. that you don't plan on adding on anything else to what you did. That's the shita of Rashi. The Rambam learned that this klal is that it's going to last. It's not a tzviyah that's for a short amount of time. Now, really, you have to understand. So, according to the Rambam, there's two mishnayos telling us this klal that there's something called a malacha that does not last is not chayiv. Now, if we have the Yerushalmi, we could turn to the Yerushalmi in the beginning of Perek HaBoina. So let's start the Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi tells us, Ma binyan hoy b'mishkan. What was the binyan that they had in the Mishkan? So Yerushalmi says that they put the kroshim al gabe adon. So in noisen kroshim al gabe adon. Asked the Yerushalmi, v'loy l'shah ha'isa, what was that not temporary? So one teretz in Yerushalmi is that since Api Hashem Yachnu, Api Hashem Yisol, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was deciding when they're going to travel, that had a halach of a binyan lo'ilam. And the other Madamar says, that it was guaranteed, it's K'moshe Hu lo'ilam. That's the teretz in the Yerushalmi. Now, seemingly, some Rishonim learn that the Yerushalmi is going on the Mishnah explaining what was Malachta Miskayemes. As long as it lasted for even a temporary binyan would be considered a binyan. But this discussion in the Yerushalmi and the case of the Rambam are two fundamentally different cases. The discussion of the binyan l'shah that we're going to get to is the discussion is if a person built something and he had in mind that he does not want it to last. He said that he's not that he built a building, but he plans on knocking it down. But here we have a totally different discussion. The Rambam's chiddush of Kol Ha'osim Malachim Malachta Miskayemes was in the quality of the building. How long does a person have to build it that it's to be considered a binyan? How long does writing have to be that's considered that I put something down on paper? The Rambam's talking about severe. He's not talking about because you could take it off. He's saying since the weakness, it's not a writing. The quality of the writing will not last even for one day. That is not considered a malacha boina, and that's a different discussion than the binyan l'shah. The discussion we're going to get to a binyan l'shah is that it's a permanent building. It happens to be that the person has in mind he does not want this building to last. Mashenkin, the chiddush of the Rambam is how long does a person have to be boina, and on that the Rambam says the quality of the building is one day. Malachta miskayemes Shabbos. Now, there's a Mishnah Brura. If we could get to the Sharat Tzion in Shin Gimel Samaches, the Rambam is very hard to understand. Where would this halacha come from? That it's just a one day. It's one day. Very nice that we know Shabbos is 24 hours, but quality shouldn't be based on how long it is. It should be based on either what the normal amount of a person to write is, a normal person to do something. But the Sharat Tzion in Shin Gimel Samaches quotes based on this Rambam. Rotza loymar v'isa bereish perek haboina the beinan daf.
Thank you.
Mishnah Brura and Samaches. If we get to underline the Sharat Tzion, Rotza loymar v'isa bereish haboina the beinan daf shtei malachta miskayemes. It should have to last. The gamlin ksiva kaimelon to be inon dafko sheyichta b'davar miskayim. You have to write with something that could last. So that's what the Mishnah Brura is going to explain why when someone ties their hair, a woman makes a braid, that's not considered binyan because it's not going to last. Ach, says the Mishnah Brura, b'reish perek haboina isa sham kol ha'osim malacha u'malachta miskayim v'shabbos chayiv. Mashma l'choiro da'afilu miskayim rak al yom haShabbos l'chud. It sounds like from the Mishnah that to be miskayim, to be considered that you actually did a malacha, all you need is that it lasts just for one day, as long as it lasts for Shabbos. Chei mashal iniyas daiti b'Rambam, the Rambam we read, Perik Yud Gimel, Ayin Sham Heitiv. Mishnah klola al yom haShabbos. The Mishnah is telling a klal on Yom Shabbos. Ochim b'Rashi Sham Isa. Rashi interprets the Mishnah differently. The high b'Shabbos ha'oisa malacha koi. It's talking about someone that did malacha. That's what the Mishnah means. Doesn't mean to say it has to last for Shabbos. Im kain mashma minei would sound like from Rashi the be'inan sheim miskayim tamid has to last permanent. Lo dai b'yem Shabbos l'chut. It's not enough to last. It's not enough just to last for one day. You have to be considered malacha miskayemes. What's considered a building? Is a building something that can last for one day, or it's enough that it has to last forever? So he says it would sound like it's a machlokes between Rashi and the Rambam. Then he says, maybe Rashi would agree to the Rambam. But Tosfos really Karashi, or that the case that Tosfos says that tying the hair is not considered boina because it's not going to last, because even if it lasts for Shabbos, but it's not enough. So Tosfos says when a woman ties her hair, you're not chayiv for binyan because Tosfos says because it's not going to last. What does it mean it's not going to last? Does it mean it's not going to last for the day of Shabbos? Or Tosfos would hold like the opinion of the Rambam that it has to, that it's not even going to last for Shabbos. So the Chafetz Chaim is putting down very clear that comes out from this Mishnah, machlokes Rishonim, in the quality of building that a person has to build to be chayiv on Shabbos. What's the quality? Is that a quality of a building of lasting for one day? Now, even according to the Rambam, that has to last for Shabbos. It's not clear. What would be according to the Rambam if someone built, 4 o'clock in the afternoon when Shkia is 4:30? Is it a Tanai that has to last a 24-hour period, or it has to last just on Shabbos? You're chayiv for being boina on Shabbos, and building a binyan on Shabbos is chayiv. Svara would be that it's a sheer in the quality. The quality should have to be a 24-hour period. But it's very, then it's not just Miskayim b'Shabbos. It should say for 24 hours. It's not clear, according to the Rambam, what would be if someone built something, it'll come out a tremendous chiddush. I don't think you have this by any other malacha. If you do it Friday night, if you do it Friday night, you'd be potter because it's only going to last till the morning. If you do it Friday night, you'll be potter. But if it's only going to last, if you do it Shabbos afternoon right before Shkia, you'd be chayiv. Now, I saw someone just ask a very good question. That's the Mishnah Brura puts seemingly according to the Rambam. What would the Rambam hold about the mission of writing b'mei Paris? So if we could get is a bir aloch and shim mem. Do we have that?
Was it in your Marmar comments?
It was not in your
so.
comments. No, I don't think so.
Then I don't have it.
Okay, so can we anyway? Is there any chance we can pull it up?
It's okay. I could say it over. The bir aloch and shim mem wants to know. So what would be the shear for koisiv? The Mishnah says that koisiv. The Mishnah on Koftah on base says you have to write sav that's miskayim. What would be the shear for koisiv? How long does it have to last? If it's not Rambam just for Shabbos, what would be the shear that does have to last for ksifa? The Mishnah doesn't give us a shear. It says that if you write ba'avak b'mei drachim, may payers the Mishnah on Koftah on base that you're part of. So what would be the shear for koisiv? Right, because we have the Mishnah that says that if you write b'mashkim, you payers ba'avak drachim, b'chol davar she'im miskayim is part. The Mishnah on Koftah on base. So what would be the shear? The Mishnah Brura quotes from a Rashba that the shear would be how long somebody writes, how long somebody would write in a Sefer Zechronis. If a person wants to write down a debt that someone owes him, he's going to write with ink that would last for a long time. So that would be the shear. But it comes out, the Mishnah Brura is pointing out, according to the Rambam, that if you put the two Mishnayos together, that the same way you have a problem with Inashal Kayoma, the same way by Binyan has to be Miskayim, and May Peres has to be Miskayim, according to the Rambam, the shear would be for the whole Shabbos. And then if the shear is the whole Shabbos, and according to the Rambam, it goes by when you actually did it, if a person would use invisible ink towards the end of Shabbos, could be according to the Rambam, you'd be chayiv. That's what would come out. That's in the first step, the machlokes between Rashi and the Rambam had to read the Mishnah, and the Chafetz Chaim saying the nafkamina would be when Tosfos says that why someone tying their hair is not considered boina, because it's not going to last, how long would it not have to last? Is it enough for Shabbos, or would it have to be even? Is it enough that it does not last just for Shabbos, or it's even if it does last for Shabbos, but it has to last for seemingly a longer period? That is the shiloh. That's the first step of the Mishnah. Now comes the second discussion. We have a halacha, let's say by kosher, that a person made it. He tied something down. If he has in mind to undo it, the halacha is that he's not chayiv because it's not a kesher shel kayom. Now that is not a question of the quality. The quality is 100% strong. He tied it down like he tied down everything else. But this person had in mind, he decided, and no, he wants to do it for 24-hour period. He wants to do it for a week, but he doesn't need it forever. He's going to undo it. That's the second halacha called kesher shel kayoma that you're part. That is not included in the Mishnah of avak and mepeiros, because there it's a full malacha. It's a different p'tur that since you plan on undoing it, you're part. The question is, what happens to meleches boina? Oh, boina has the flip side. So you say, what happens if someone built something and he doesn't plan that shall last forever? He built it. There's nothing wrong with the building. The building could last for as long as he wants, but his intention is when he puts it down that he's not going to be boina forever. Is that considered binyan or not? So I don't know. Did the mechaschenech make it on?
No, but I can get it from another source.
No, it's a. I'm sorry for the late Mar Mekayim. The Mechaschenech has a discussion which really starts in Pnei Yeshua. What happens? The Gemara says that by making cheese, Megavin is chayav because of boina. You're putting something together. You're making a salad. So Pnei Yeshua asks, the person plans on eating it. This binyan is a temporary building. This building is not going to last. What is the halacha in such a case? Are you chayav because of boina or not? And the Pnei Yeshua wants to medayik from the Rambam that he's not chayav in such a case. And Mechaschenech asks on him, the Rambam says it's also maybe not chayav chatos, but definitely considered a binyan. So this discussion comes in the Gdolei Achronim. If a person built a permanent building, but he does not want it to last, is it included in the kshira, that there's a halacha of kesher shel kayoma, which is nothing wrong with the knot, but you plan on doing it, or do you say that you're not chayiv in such, or do you say that you're chayiv in such a case? It's a full building binyan. That what you plan on doing it is a totally different mice. So the reason to discuss this question at great length is a Tshuvas Chasam Sefer. But to get clarity in the sheet of the Chasam Sefer, we have to imaktim really Yerushalmi and two Gemaras, and to go through it with the clarity to know what the sheet, what the maskana of the halacha is. In binyan, a person builds a strong structure, but he does not want it to last for more than for a permanent amount of time. So we have the Yerushalmi in Perek HaBoineh. No, the previous Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi says, "Ma binyan hoya b'mishkan." What was the building that they had in the Mishkan? Asked Yerushalmi, "V'loy l'shohoisa." The Mishkan, "Ma binyan hoya b'mishkan." So in noisman kroshim al gabe adonim, that they put the kroshim on top of the adonim. Asked Yerushalmi, "V'loy l'shohoisa." It was temporary. Amar Rav Yosi, "Mikivan shein noisim v'choin al pi adibur k'moishu hu lo'olam." So Rav Yosi says, since they were noisim v'choin al pi adibur, it's considered permanent. Yerushalmi says different teretz. Amar Rav Yosi, "Barabun mikivan shefticha kosh baruch shemachnis la'aretz k'moishu hu lo'olam." So Yerushalmi gives two different terutzim why the binyan of the Mishkan was not considered a temporary building. We know all malachas, you only chayiv whatever happened in the Mishkan. It says the Yerushalmi, the binyan of the Mishkan was a temporary building. Says Yerushalmi, no. Since they were noisa v'choina al pi adibur, it's k'moshe hu lo olam. Now, what's very important is if you take on like the Yerushalmi's question that the binyan in the Mishkan was temporary, you'll have a clear halacha in the Yerushalmi. If someone built a strong building and he only had it for temporary, he had in mind to use it for a temporary amount of time, it would be considered a building. But if you follow the Yerushalmi's teretz that they were noisin v'choinin al pi adibur k'moshe hu lo olam, that it's considered permanent, so then you have a clear Yerushalmi. And no, that even though that the binyan HaMishkan was a permanent building, because there were noisin v'choinin al pi adibur, which we'll have to explain why that's considered permanent. But if you follow the Yerushalmi's train of thought that the Mishkan was a permanent building, then you don't have any raya will be on a temporary building. Someone built something for a short amount of time. He built a strong building, but he had in mind to take it apart, he should be pot. So this is one Yerushalmi. Now, we have to figure out, very good, we know the Shita of the Yerushalmi, but since we don't always follow the Rambam Paskin's based on the Yerushalmi, we have to figure out what is the Shita of the Bavli in such a case. So we have to turn to the Chsam Sofer. We'll see two Gemaras, and then we'll see who's right, the Chsam Sofer and Meir Simcha. The Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Lamed Aleph on Beis, has a discussion. The Gemara wants to know, we have a malacha of soiser. The only time a person's chayiv for soiser, if it's amanas livnes from kohen. He wants to build back in the same place. But if he wants to build it in a different place, he's not considered the malacha of soiser. So ask the Gemara, Amalei Rabba, Michti, Kol malachos yafinu mi Mishkan. All malachas we learn out from the Mishkan. The only malachas yichayv on Shabbos, whatever happened in the Mishkan. The Hasam soisa amanas livnei shleimim koymu. Person had in mind to build it in a different place. They took apart the Mishkan and they planned on wherever Hashem said they should do it, but they didn't assume it'd be back in the same place. So the Gemara says, Shani Hasam, over there it's different. Kivan diksiv al pi Hashem yachanu al pi Hashem yiso, very similar to the words of the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi word uses al pi Hashem yachanu al pi Hashem yiso. That's permanent. The Bavli uses those words. It's considered stira to build it back in the same place. Now, so far it sounds like the train of thought of the Bavli would be al derech the Yerushalmi, that the binyan HaMishkan was not a temporary building; it was a permanent building. And then you see clearly from the Yerushalmi, that it was a permanent Bavli, that's a permanent building, and then a temporary building would be part. That would be how it looks from this Gemara. The problem is we have a previous Gemara, the Gemara on Lamed Aleph, the Gemara on Ayin Daled on Beis, which is really later on. The Gemara on Ayin Daled on Beis says, where was the Kshira of the Mishkan? Where they do the malacha of tying something down in the Mishkan? The Gemara says they were kosher b'yiseidos oyalim. They tied down the tents to the pegs, and that was considered a malachas kshira. Asked the Gemara, "Ahu kshira amanas lahateru." That it with the condition to take it apart. It wasn't a kesher oilam. It was not a kesher oilam. So seemingly we have a clear stira in two Gemaras. How do we look at the binyan of the Mishkan? Do you look at the binyan of a Mishkan as a temporary building, or do you look at the binyan of Mishkan as a permanent building? Very clear stira in two Gemaras. So we could pull out the tshuva of the Chsam Sofer. The Chsam Sofer is discussing the chumrah of the Neidim Yehuda. Neidim Yehuda had a tremendous chumrah that to use a umbrella on Shabbos. Using an umbrella on Shabbos, to open up an umbrella on Shabbos. The parasol is what's called an umbrella. He said that Neidim Yehuda was choshid for a chiyuv chatz. So Chsam Sofer says a little further down in the tshuva, he says he doesn't see a chiyuv chatz. He says achar and he says it's not mishnas chasidim who the shemer nafshe yirchik mehem, but there's no tzad of a chiyuv chatz. Why? So the Chassam Sofer says, I'll pay this the Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi Klagodo, Ma Binyan Hoy Mishkan, Kroshem Agabi Adonim. Ask the Yerushalmi Vlav L'Shah. So, Am Rav Yosi, Yitoch Shei Noisim V'Choyin Al Pi Adiber, K'moish V'Choyin L'Olam. The other man that says, Mikivan Shefticha HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shechnis L'Oretz, K'moish L'Shah. He explains the Chassam Sofer, it's a Machlokes in the Yerushalmi. Hado Amri, according to the one that says that it's Al Pi Hashem Yachanu, that's a permanent encampment, then Binyan L'Shah is not a binyan. But according to the man the Omar that says that it was a binyan olam because Al Pi Hashem Yachnu, the Mishkan is a binyan olam, then Shah would not be considered a binyan. So a little further down says the Chassam Sofer, further down the Tshuva, Chada Davi binyan L'Shah, that putting up this umbrella, making an umbrella on Shabbos is a binyan L'Shah. Who pirish binyan L'Shah. He made it for a set amount of time, and he wants to take it apart. It says the Chassam Sofer is made. Every time a person opens an umbrella, you hope it's going to stop raining. When you go inside, you're going to close it. So he says that is exactly the binyan that happened in the Mishkan. That says that the Mishkan is Al Pi Hashem Yachanu, that it was considered a binyan la'olam. It's binyan olam. The Mishkan itself is a binyan olam, says the Chassam Sofer. In Kahn, if the Mishkan is a binyan olam, so we go back to the cloud, binyan l'shah is not a binyan. But kivan the Ashichon Stama Talmuda. So how has the Bavli Paskin? We have a Gemara says Naflamet Aleph and Beis. Gemara says I'm not living from Koimah. Why? Kivan the Ksiv Al Pi Hashem Yachnu Al Pi Hashem Yisol is Kim Koimah Dami. Says I have often the Gemara on that one is that Mishkan was a permanent building. In Kahn, says the Chassam Sofer, opening of the umbrella is made l'shah. Made l'shah would be permitted. That's the Chassam Sofer's take. He says he has often a Gemara on Lamed Alpha and Beis that the Mishkan is considered a binyan olam, and it's a clear Gemara that binyan l'shah will be mutter. So opening umbrella, there's no issue whatsoever. Even if you want to say that it's the shalva oil, any binyan that was in the Mishkan was only a permanent building, and opening of an umbrella is a binyan l'shah, and it should be mutter. He says la mishas chasidim, and it's clear the minig is nobody uses an umbrella on Shabbos, even a place that does have an erev. But the Chassam Sofer says there's no shalva v'chiyav chatas. Now the Gdolei Achronim are very, very niskasha on the Chassam Sofer, because he's taking into account one Gemara and he's leaving out another Gemara. Even if you'll say that he's right in the Gemara Laman Alpha and Beis, that the Gemara calls the Mishkan as a binyan olam, it's called Anas Livnes Ben Kaim. But you have a Gemara Nayin Daled. The Gemara says that kosher in the Mishkan is Anas Lahatru. You can't consider it. You don't say it's considered a kesher la'olam. This is the Arsameach. Other many Gdolei Achronim are ma'oid niskasha on the Chassam Sofer's psak that binyan l'shah is not a binyan based off the Gemara and Lamed Alpha and Beis. You have a clear Gemara and Lamed Daled and Ayin Daled and Beis, not like the Chassam Sofer. This is Remeir Simcha's question. Now, Remeir Simcha still has to answer another question. Very good. You can't say the Chassam Sofer is right in his psak because based off the Gemara on Lamed Alpha and Beis, the Gemara and Ayin Daled, you have to answer the steer of the two Gemaras. So Remeir Simcha says very clear that the Chassam Sofer put together two Gemaras that are two totally independent discussions. The Gemara on Lamed Aleph and Beis has a discussion, not if it's temporary or permanent. The Gemara has a discussion when they undid the Mishkan, where are they planning on putting back the Mishkan? Are they planning on putting it back in Koimoi or in another place? Says the Gemara, Kivan Diksiv Al Pi Hashem Yachanu, Al Pi Hashem Yisol, you're following Hashem is Kim Koimoi Dam. It's going back to the same place. If we could pull back out the Gemara Lamed Aleph and Beis, there's Rabbeinu Hanan on the side who says the Pshat in the Gemara is, what's the Pshat in the Gemara? That how could it be Kim Niksiv Al Pi Hashem Yachanu Al Pi Hashem Yisol is Kim Koimoi Dami? V'tochen sheyomer lehem shuvu choinu b'oisem akum. Rabbeinu Hananel said the pshat in the Gemara is that they're in the midbar they were following HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They weren't in control. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said when they traveled, and that's it. they never knew any place that they came to. They didn't know if it's gonna be 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months. They didn't know any. Answer Rabbeinu Hananel, not only did they not know that, they didn't even know when they're gonna undo the whole Mishkan. HaKadosh Baruch Hu might say, "Go back to the same place. I just want you to undo the Mishkan." So that's why it's considered Kim Koimedam. That's Rabbeinu Hananel's pshat in the Gemara. When I was a young bacher, I heard from my Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Osban. He said he heard from Chaim Shmulevitz a different pshat in the Gemara. Chaim Shmulevitz used to say a mashal that when a child is traveling from Yerushalayim to Bnei Brak in a tender, and somebody asks where the mother is, they say the mother's traveling from Yerushalayim to Bnei Brak. But if you ask where the child is, of course you're going to say the child's in the mother's hand. That you don't focus on where the child's where his location is. His location is that his mother's holding him. He's sitting in his mother's lap. So he used to say the pshat in this Gemara is they were in Hashem's hand. Their mokum we're not looking at their place where they are in the location on the map. Their place is in the hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it's all considered Kim Koim.
Can you explain that a little bit? Just explain it again, because I think the Elam would like to hear it again. The last word.
Reb Chaim Shmulevitz was saying that more that when you have a child that's going somewhere from point A to point B, the mother is going in a taxi, a tender on the highway. But where's the child? You're focused on the child. The child's place is in his mother's hand. So he's always in the same place. You don't look at the child based on the map. You look at the child based on being in his mother's hand. So Reb Chaim Shmulevitz used to say the pshat in the Gemara is Api Hashem Yachnu, Api Hashem Yiso. In the midbar, the whole 40 years, they were kol kulei telling HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they're in Hashem's hand. Wherever they were, that was their mokum. Their mokum wasn't the physical place to land on the map. We're 40 degrees north of this town, all different places on the map. Their place was the other HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that's what's considered Kim Koim. It's more derech Jewish. Rabbeinu Hananel saying the pshat in the Gemara is Hashem could tell him to go back to the same. Idea is that in the Mishkan it was Amnas Livnei Kim Koim. So says Rameir Simcha, of course the Mishkan was a temporary building. I don't see anything from this teretz to the Yerushalmi clapping the discussion, the Bavli of the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi's discussion was where's my place? If it's considered a temporary building or a permanent building. Says the Yerushalmi, that's considered a permanent building. The Bavli is discussing a whole different discussion. Says Rameir Simcha. The Bavli's discussion is this considered or in Seisar, a new place? So says Rameir Simcha, there's no raya what the Yerushalmi's shita about the Mishkan being a temporary building or a permanent building. The Mishkan was a temporary building. And if someone makes a temporary building like the Neiv Yehuda, temporary umbrella is chayiv chatas. The reason what the Yerushalmi, the Bavli means to say, I'm not living from koimoy, is that's a permanent building. It doesn't mean to say it's a permanent building. It means to say that the mokum, the place, for sure, according to Rabbeinu Hananel, all the Bavli means to take out is that you're back in your same place. You started off in point A, you could end up in point A. But is that building permanent or temporary? Says Rameir Simcha, there is no raya whatsoever to the shita of the Yerushalmi's question. And Rameir Simcha says he's mispala, he's pella to him. Hilchos Sofer put together two discussions. Now, to answer the Hilchos Sofer, you have to understand. I think the Hilchos Sofer, how he brought the raya from the Gemara Laman Alpha and Beis, if you could learn the Gemara like Rabbeinu Hananel, it's not clear. But the Hilchos Sofer understood that the Yerushalmi's teretz was that the Bavli's teretz is similar to the Yerushalmi. It's considered a permanent building. That's how the Hilchos Sofer learned the Bavli's teretz. The question on the Hilchos Sofer is, So why would the Gemara say Kshira? Why would Kosher be Amnas Lahater if the Mishkan was permanent? Why wouldn't you have the same halacha like Kshira as we apply to Bin? So at the end of the day, the Psak of Chasam Sofer is still straight from the Gemara 9,000 on this. The Gemara says that the tying in the Mishkan was considered temporary, and the Chasam Sofer is saying the binyan in the Mishkan was considered permanent. So how do we answer the Chasam Sofer's shita, which is clear that's what maybe they held? Why opening our bells Chayav Chatas? How do we answer his shita from the Gemara 9,000 on this? So I think to answer the Chasam Sofer, how there's a fundamental difference. I think why Kesher has to be permanent and why Boynet would have to be permanent. That which Kesher has to be permanent is not just because Kachavi b'Mishkan. The idea of Kesher being permanent is that the whole purpose is that you're tying something, you're taking two separate things and you're making it into as one. You're tying two totally independent things and you want to make them into one thing. So on that, the reason why it has to be permanent is not just because that's how the binyan was in the Mishkan. The chefs of the malacha is that you're taking two separate things and you want to create them not exactly into one. Maybe each one maintains its independence, but the idea, because you could take it apart afterwards. But the idea is you're taking two separate things. You want to make that into one chefs. That is the malacha of kosh. On that, the Gemara says if it's amnas lahater, that's not considered a malacha's kosh. Masha'inke in the malacha of binyan, the whole idea is not binyan's also taking different parts and putting them together. But the idea is not the putting together. The idea is that you created something. The malacha's boina is I took pieces of wood, I put a few screws, and I made myself a stender. I made myself a table. I have something. So then, even if I plan on taking it apart later, that wouldn't be a steer to the malach. Mashenkin Bekshira, the reason why it has to be permanent is not so much because Kachavi Mishkan. The reason why it has to be permanent is because that's the chefs of the malachas kosher, that it has to be that they stay together. They stay together. And the Achronim bring a raya. You have that if you write with Ksav She'in Miskayim, you write with dust. It's potter. It's potter aval aser. Kshira, if you tie something, it's not a kesher kayama. It's not the malacha at all. The essence of malachas kosher is that you're tying it and you're making it permanent. The minute that you have amnas lahater, that's not considered malacha. For that, the Bavli held you can't learn out from the Mishkan, because even if the Mishkan was considered permanent, it was only permanent in the structure being permanent, and you have a binyan, you have something from it. Masha'in came for the so that's why you be chayav for binyan. You say that binyan l'shah it was a binyan olam. Masha'in came for kshir, you have to create one thing. That the Chasam Sofer held that you would not be chayav for the malacha of you're not be chayav for kosh, and you can't bring a raya from the Mishkan, even though it was Api Hashem Yachanu, Api Hashem Yisrael, and should be Kaimai, and should be considered binyan olam. For Kesher, that svar would not be enough. For Kesher, I need to have it to be actually be permanent, because I'm taking two separate things, I'm making it into one. It's what I have in the building. Then, as long as I have something for even a small amount of time, that could be considered a binyan olam. So, just to summarize, we have a fundamental machlokes in the Yerushalmi. If binyan l'shah, a temporary building, a strong building that a person plans on taking apart, that's considered boinah. And where does the discussion start from? The discussion starts, how do we look at the binyan HaMishkan? Do we say the binyan HaMishkan was a permanent building because in structure it was strong and it was supposed to last? But so then I see from the Mishkan that even though I plan on undoing it, that's considered a boinah. The other sheet in the Yerushalmi says no. The binyan in the Mishkan was temporary. They were always moving. Because Baruch was maftiach them that they're going to go into Eretz Yisrael. So that binyan was temporary. So I see even a temporary building, a person is chayiv. That is the machlokes in the Yerushalmi. Now the question is, how do we take it to the Bav? What would be the halacha if somebody made a temporary building a building, a strong structure, but he doesn't plan on that staying. The Chassam Sofer says that binyan is not chai b'chlal, because the binyan hamishkan was a permanent structure. Because Al Pi Hashem Yachad, Al Pi Hashem Yisod, it's considered back in the same place. That's a permanent building. Masha Ein Kain. The Sameach says no. The Sameach says that the binyan hamishkan was a temporary building, and maybe Yechayiv even for binyan l'shah. The Gemara means only a different svara that's considered building back in the same place. But the binyan mishkan is temporary. And the raya to that would be Kshira, the Gemara says it's Keshav Nas Lahatru. So you see the Bavli holds the other way, that a binyan mishkan is temporary, and still Yechayiv. Now, a little shver made a simcha, if he holds binyan a mishkan is temporary and you're still chayiv, how do we know that Keshav Nas Lahatru is part of? Maybe the same binyan, which is Amnas Lister, is chayiv, maybe Keshav Nas Lahatru is also chayiv. So you have to say, according to Rei Simcha, the same svar I'm saying the Chassam Sofer, that was partial to the Gemara. The kosher that's not permanent is missing in the Melechas Kshira, because that the Melechas kosher is to take two separate things and create them into one. Now, it ends up being this Shiloh, what the Psak of the Bavli and Yerushalmi is the machlokes between the Noda B'Yehuda. Because the Noda B'Yehuda says taking a umbrella on Shabbos is chayv, which is very clear. The umbrella is temporary. Right now, he's building an oil for when it's raining. He's going to walk back into his house when he gets to shul. He's going to undo it. So Noda B'Yehuda says Yechayiv Chatos. It's very clear to Noda B'Yehuda that temporary structure he holds is chayiv, and the Chassam Sofer disagrees on that and says temporary structure is part. We don't have achra on this shayla in the Mishnah Berurah, but we have machlokes gedolei achronim. Now, from the fact that the minhag is not to use an umbrella, that's not a raya, because even the Chassam Sofer agrees if it's not chayiv chatas, lav mishnas chasidim who to use. And that starts off the machlokes between the Noda B'Yehuda and the Chassam Sofer. What I wanted to discuss is another shayla, is a little more halacha l'maisa. Besides the umbrella, is we have many different toys that children use, either your children, your grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews, to play with, and they take many different parts and they put them all together. So most of them are temporary. Nobody plans on keeping them for a long amount of time. You build the Lego set and they take it apart. So do we look at that as if you go like the Chassam Sofer, there's no question whatsoever. It's a binyan l'shah. And the Chassam Sofer doesn't even say that binyan l'shah is also midrabanan. So you would have according to the Chassam Sofer, there'd be a heter, something that's a temporary building, not permanent, would be mutter based on this Yerushalmi. But we have the Noda B'Yehuda and the Chassam Sofer, the Noda B'Yehuda and the Sameach against us. So what would be the halacha of to play these type of toys on Shabbos? So to that, we'd have another twist in this. This is not so much a discussion based on the Bavli and Yerushalmi. This will be another discussion of how you could have a tzad that even though we pass in binyan l'shah, a building that a person put together, and he totally does not plan on keeping it, it's considered a boina, but like Magavin, like we see from the Rambam, that's someone that makes cheese, even though you plan on eating it, which cheese you could don alum the shataina, that eating the cheese is not undoing it. You just, it ends up, you could swallow it whole. It's not, it's not knocking it down, you're dissolving it. You can take it down in small pieces, it's still there, the binyan. So you could don on the Pnei Yeshua's taina of Magav. But this shayla would be, what would be if a person wants to have to play with all the different toys? If you don't go to Chassam Sofer, would be any mokum to be machalik and still have a heter of binyan l'shah, which is not really binyan l'shah, because we're going to go binyan l'shah is oster, but there is a graz. I hope did the graz make it to the page?
Not sure. We did not get it from our regular source, but maybe our Mordechai can put it up. Yeah. Okay. Laser has a shiloh. Oh, we're looking for this graz.
No.
Yeah.
We don't have. Okay. You have to write us to graz. Can you read it to us?
Graz
You
I
have
don't
one?
have it in front of me, but the Graz says, no, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. The
Okay.
Graz in Shin Yud Gimel says it's a tremendous Yesod, which would be more based on the Mishnah that we started off with, not the discussion of the Yerushalmi. What happens if somebody has a binyan that he plans on taking apart that day? Which really, I'll give a mashal. If a person's screw falls out of his glasses and he puts back in the screw, he's chayav on Shabbos because of binyan. Because we'll follow the sheet of Tosis that a binyan choshev b'kelim is chayav. What happens if you have a pot? The only way to use it, it's a pressure cooker. The only way to use it is to screw in the top. Or the mashal or Shabbos brings a beautiful mashal, a salt shaker. The only way you use a salt shaker is you screw on the top. Is that considered boine or not? What is the halacha in such a case? So this is a fundamental machlokes between the Graz, the Shulchan Aruch HaRav, and the Chazon Ish. Why this is not considered boine? It's not temporary, but you plan on doing it. So the Graz says the lomdus why you're not chayav because of boine is because you plan on taking it apart. Some part of it, you take part. It's like you have the stenders when I was younger that the screws go up and go down. It's not just like a folding stender. You had to undo the screw on the side to lift it. But since it's the derech, undo it as long as if you do it on Shabbos, you're potter. If it's under, you keep for a while, you'd be asim midrabanan, but you wouldn't be chai. That's the Graz issue. Chazon Ish understood and no, it's a lumnus. The reason why a kisi a kalim, the HaRav asked the question: why don't you put a cover on top of your pot? Why is it not considered an oil? Because even oil ara is also asim midrabanan. Why would covering a pot not be considered an oil? So the HaRav explain that no, the only time you consider something to be a binyan, so you put together two separate things that you want them to stay together. You markiv two chalokim, you make them into one. But if you put something that is to take it apart afterwards, that's not considered klal the melecha's boina. Boina is to take two separate things to make them into one, even for a small amount of time. But if the whole way, by putting them together, it would ruin them, you can never use it afterwards. That's not considered the melecha's boina. So based on that, many gedolei achronim say that Aruch Shabbos says that there are those that be matter to play with Lego based on this reason. Because if the Lego would stay together, or the clicks would stay together, the magnet tiles, you wouldn't be able to use it. The whole hana is to put it together, take it apart, and put it back together. By putting it together forever, it's not usable. That wouldn't be included. Even according to the shittas, the whole binyan shows a binyan. That's only if you could leave it forever. But if by leaving it forever would ruin it, it'd be a steer to the tashmish of the kli, then you'd not be chayiv for boina and be permitted. So that's the shita of some achronim. Other achronim say that no, it's not exactly like a cover to a pot, but the derech is always to take it off. Here, you could leave it together. Certain parts, certain Legos, you definitely could leave it together. That which you decide afterwards take it apart, be more along the Chassam Sofer's track, that'd be considered binyan l'shah.
According to the Matirim, it's Darvashim is Chavan. That's the side of the heter.
No. It's not Melechas Boin. The fact that by something that stays together, it would ruin the kli. You can't use it afterwards. You have these magnet tiles that if you keep them together, there's nothing to do with it. The whole hana is to build it, take it apart, put it back together. The blocks, the building blocks, the whole child's hana is to build it, then undo it. So if by keeping it together, there's no use for it anymore, that's not boina. Boina means to say that you're using the kli, you're building it and you have something. But if by building it, you can't use it anymore, it ruins the kli, that wouldn't be considered melechas boina.
Okay.
So I see the question about the Lego spaceships. So I thought about this, that based on the way I understand it, I think there's a fine line that one could say there's certain Legos that are like collectible items that a person builds that and he keeps it on. According to the way I understand, even the material would answer in such a case. Masha'inkin, you have Legos that a person builds and takes apart afterwards, then it'll be mutter. But if it's like a set the person wants to build and puts it on display, then that would be considered. Then according to everybody, it would be awesome. The only heter that you would have, you don't even have the Chassam Sofer, because the whole heter the Chassam Sofer is because you want to take it apart. Here, the whole hana is to build it and it should stay. Then that would be considered.
And what about what if the kid's minig is to build it and take it apart Matzah Shabbos after Shabbos? We back into the Sharetzian's problem. It's miskayim for Shabbos, but it's not for after Shabbos.
No, because if it's a permanent, the way I understood the Sharatzian is only what's missing in the quality of the malach. Here it could last. The Sharatzian's case is that your quality is only to last for 24 hours. So he has a suffix, Rambam and Rashi, how long does the quality have to be? Here, the quality can last for 10 years. It happens to be the kids have knows to take it apart. Then according to what I'm understanding, that might be, if it could last and he wants it to last, then that might be nichlal in the Isser of Boina on Shabbos.